Hello, my name is Emma, and today I am going to teach you how to read better. So when you go to high school or university, or even for work, sometimes you have to read very difficult things in English. I'm going to teach you a method today to help you understand what you read better and remember what you read better. Now, first of all, I just want to show you how I used to read textbooks. So this is a book from when I was in university. What you will see is everything is highlighted. So I would take a highlighter and I would just highlight everything. Now, this is not a good idea. It did not help me remember the information. Instead, what I should have been doing is something like this method, the SQ3R method. So the SQ3R method, many teachers use this method when they teach, and it's a method to help you read better. Specifically, there are 5 steps. The first step is survey. Second step is question. These steps happen before you read. And I will go through each of these steps in detail in a moment. Then we have the third step, which is you actually read. Then the fourth step, recite. And the fifth step, review. These 2 steps are done after reading immediately. So by using these 5 steps when you read, you can understand a lot more. And that is very important when you are reading difficult books, especially if English is not your first language. These tips can also help people who English is their first language, but they're just trying to remember more of what they read. So now let's get started by understanding what you do when you survey. The first step in the SQ3R method is to survey what you're going to read. So I've chosen here a textbook I had to read in university, Principles of Human Physiology. This was a very difficult textbook to read. So what you can do if you have something difficult to read like this is imagine I'm looking at this page. The first thing I want to do before I read everything is I want to prepare my brain for the information. So I'm going to look at the pictures, if there's any pictures, try to figure out what the pictures mean. If there's any graphs or tables, I might look at those. I will look at headings. So right here, I don't know if you can see it, but in green, there's a heading. It says structure at the molecular level. I'm going to look at anything that has a heading or a subheading. And I'm going to think about, okay, what is this going to be about? What is this going to tell me about? Another thing I can do is look at anything in bold. So this page actually has some writing that's in bold and there are some definitions. So I might quickly look at that. The point is when I survey, before I read, I look at headings, subheadings, bold text, charts, graphs, and photos. And the point is to start to think, okay, what am I going to be reading about? It prepares my brain for new information. And that's why I'm doing this. It gets you ready for the actual reading you're about to do. This should not take long, maybe a minute or 2 minutes. It's a very quick thing to do. You're just very quickly looking at what you're going to read before you read it. The second step in our method is to question. Before you read, it's a good idea to create some questions about what you're about to read. So the way you can do this is you can open up your book. So here's the book I'm reading. And again, I find those headings or subheadings, and I can ask questions about them. So in this case, the first heading I see says dating techniques. So I might ask a question. What are dating techniques? Okay. And then I might look at another heading that says relative dating methods. So I might ask a question, what are relative dating methods? And then I see there is something in bold, FUN trio. I don't know what that is. I might ask, what is the FUN trio? What does it stand for? And then I might look at this picture. So you can see a picture here. I might say, what's this a picture of? What does this line mean? So asking questions before you read is a good idea. This is just one example, but again, you turn whatever you're reading, turn the headings into questions. What, why, how, when, where, these types of questions. And then again, asking questions before you read helps you become an active reader. And remember, when you're actively reading, you understand better and you remember more. So now it's time to actually read. So we've already surveyed the book. We've already asked some questions. The third step is reading the actual thing you need to read. So the first tip is read carefully. Take your time. You might have to reread parts, and that's okay. And try to answer the questions you came up with during the Q part of the SQ3R. So think about, remember you had questions about the subheadings and the headings. You can, or some of the pictures. You can try to answer those questions as you read. You can also look for key points in what you're reading. If you see a definition, that might be important. You know, what something means. You can look at examples, try to understand the main ideas of what you're reading, and write down important information. So remember, I showed you the book I used in my first year of university. I used a highlighter and highlighted everything. By my third year of university, I'd learned, so this book I had to read in my third year of university, and what you'll see is all these little tabs here. But I started to use sticky notes. And so what I would do when I would read is I would read something and then I would write down questions, or I would write down key points that I was reading, and I'd use sticky notes. Sometimes I would actually write in the actual book. Some people hate doing that, and that's okay. Some people like to write in their books, and that's okay too. Whatever works for you. But the main thing is you want to start thinking, what am I reading that is important? What do I need to remember? So ask yourself these questions as you read. Again, ask yourself, is this important? Why or why not? There's a lot of information in these books, and some of it's details that you might not need to remember. So it's a skill to learn, what do I need to remember? What's important? What should I take notes on? And what is less important? One trick is if you're in university or college and your professor mentions an idea, and then you see the same idea in the book you're reading, it's probably an important idea that you should remember. So if you notice the professor says something, the book says the same thing, that probably is important to remember, especially for a test. You can also use in some textbooks, there's a summary at the end of each chapter. So you can also use these summaries to help you figure out if something's important or not. So I'm going to show you another book. So again, this was my physiology textbook. And I don't know how well you can see it, but at the end of every chapter, there is something called a chapter review or summary. And it writes all the key ideas that you should know that were important in the chapter. So sometimes reading this can really help you understand what's important and to make sure you didn't miss anything that's important. So read carefully, read for the main ideas, and take notes while you read. This is how you become an active reader. If you're just reading without taking notes, you're probably going to forget something. The next step in the SQ3R method is recite. So this is done after you read. And what do you do? Well, imagine I've just finished the chapter. read everything. Now what I do is I close the book and I test myself. So I try to answer the questions I had from earlier. Remember in the Q part, the question part, we came up with some questions based off of the headings and subheadings. Now I'm going to ask myself some questions. What did I just read? What were some new words that I learned? What does, earlier I mentioned the fun trio from that one book. What does the fun trio mean again? So I might ask myself questions based off of what I learned. And I can try to ask other questions. So what did I learn? What new words did I learn? What were some of the key findings or key points that I just read about? And I should quiz myself. Okay, I learned the word fun trio. What is fun trio? Let me think. Oh, okay, I remember what the fun trio is, just as an example. I actually read that book a long, long time ago, and I don't remember anything about this fun trio. It's just an example. The last R in the SQ3R method stands for review. It's what you do after reading. It's the last thing you do, which is you review your notes. Remember, I mentioned you can write on sticky pads or even in the book or on a separate piece of paper. Review the notes that you wrote while you were reading the text. You can review the sections that you've read. You can ask yourself, did I understand the main idea? Did I understand the key details? If you're still confused, you can go back and reread the parts that are confusing. Another thing I would recommend is think about it. Can you explain this information to someone else? You can even try. If you had to sum up the chapter you just read, how would you explain it to somebody? These are great ways to actively read. And remember, when you are actively reading, you remember way more. And even though it feels like this is a lot of work, when it's time for exams or tests, I promise you will actually have saved yourself some time. And you'll remember this information for years and years to come. So it's actually a really good idea if you want to learn something to use this method. And again, when I first started university, I did this. I highlighted everything. By the end, I actually was using this method, and I found this method has been so helpful that even though I'm out of university, I use this in everyday reading. Whenever I have to read something difficult, this is how I do it. Or if I want to read something and remember it, this is how I do it. So thank you so much for watching today. Practice makes perfect. So if you want to practice what you learned here today, you can visit our website at www.ingvid.com, and you can take a quiz to review the concepts in the SQ3R method. So you can also check out my YouTube channel. We have a lot of different information and a lot of different videos on different learning strategies, on tips about reading, writing, and so much more. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time.